are shows like Blackish so important? Well, I think they're there to. I mean, in the recent years, for example, Blackish, well, probably one of the best black shows I've ever seen. It's there to um, pose as a sort of entertainment for people, but also to break those social barriers and those misconceptions. So, for example, in the first episode of Blackish, Andre Johnson, he starts with telling his kids that I don't want my kids to be, I want my kids to be black, not blackish, right? And so he starts by telling them the origins of being black and not just being, even though in his childhood he was kind of following everything that was mainstream, so Black Panthers, Malcolm X, and everything that was deemed at that time to be being a black patriot. But he tries to tell his kids that there's him, especially his wife, Bo. She tries to tell to inform their kids that there's more to the world than just the things that we see that come off of black people, and which are mostly negative things. And so they try to tie their kids to society and to try to make sure that they see the world in a more, I don't know, in a more deeper way, in a way that's more that enriches lives of other people, and that in a way that kind of shows the other people the perspective of black people. So, for example, in the recent episode, I think it was called Hope, where it was a very, very deep episode. I suggest everybody go watch it. They talk about how it was, the context was there was some kind of the McQuillan case where a black person was shot, and the judge reached the verdict where, or the jury reached the verdict where the person was the police was not found guilty of having shot him. And so in the episode, the family kind of divides into two factions. I feel like in the episode they really tried to bring in a lot of humor, because as we know, like a lot of, like, I personally think that Blackish is kind of the black version of Modern Family, right? And so they tried to incorporate a lot of jokes in that episode. But then what happened was that it really got emotional. I'm a person who's seldom emotional, not a person who shows like emotion, but it really kind of showed the side where, like, it really kind of showed some kind of deep, like a real deep version of what we see that's happening today. So a lot of shootings, mass shootings that happened, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and all the other blacks who were shot. And so, for example, in that show, the family kind of divides into two factions. Some of them are saying that, oh, you see, it's just another product of how the system is mistreating black people, and this is just the McQuillan case was just another proof of how the government and the system was made to hinder the progress of black people. And then the other side of the family, which says that no, we shouldn't look at it that way. The police are there to protect us, and even though they've done certain things that are wrong, they're only a bad apple that's in the basket, and so we should trust the government with whatever decision they make. And so by the end of the show, you really understand what is really important. I mean, you really understand how the world, you just see how, from like a kind of a comedic perspective, how two things. First of all, how shows like that can have an effect on you. I mean, when I watched the show, I was really, like, because I watch Blackish all the time to have fun, to laugh, to be amused and everything. But then when I watched that show, I was just sitting there, and I was close to tearing up. And for me, that's something that just that means a lot to me. And so when I was hearing the part towards the end where Andre Johnson was telling his wife, "Bro, the part when Obama's inauguration happened in 2008, when he was walking that street with Michelle, didn't you have that slight notion that he might just be shot again, just for being African American, the first black African American president? He might just be shot, just like Martin Luther King was shot." And so when I heard that part, it really made me think. It really made me think of all the things in the past few decades or 100 years that led up to this moment. And so I think that these shows are really important. They're there to inform us. They're there to kind of break those misconceptions and those social barriers that a lot of people have about black people. And in terms of white people watching it, well, I think it's really important for white people to watch it. I mean, everybody should watch it. If black people and white people watch Modern Family, why shouldn't black people and white people watch Blackish? I mean, Blackish I feel like it is just kind of like an imitation or kind of a similarity to Modern Family. And so, even though Blackish is one of those shows, and even other shows like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they're there for comedic purposes, they have a lot of fun, but they're there to kind of indirectly send us messages, like subliminal messages about what's going on in the real world. I mean, there was a lot of themes that were discussed in Blackish. I mean, the appropriation of the N-word, um, uh, uh, many things that black people do. I think that Blackish is really there to it's really there to inform us. I mean, if you watch it carefully, if you read between the lines, you're able to pick on a lot of lessons, a lot of lessons. So, for example, in the TV show, Zoe, who is the daughter, who's very, she lives in a very superficial world. She's this popular girl. She doesn't want to be seen with her brother at school and everything. But in that last show, she just breaks down. She's like, I don't know what to think anymore. I feel like why is everybody so crazy? Why is the world such a bad place? Why are all of you working to destroy the world and all those things? And so it really shows how these things, even these things that are happening in the world, even though we do not see them as affecting us directly. I mean, Andre Johnson family, they weren't affected directly by the McClellan case or by the riots that were happening. But at the end of the show, all the elder people except for Jack and Diana, who had to stay home with Grandma Ruby, well, everybody went out to go and participate in those protests, and that's really symbolic. I mean, the fact that the notion that you know one person's fight is it's all of our fights. It's a fight that's for all of us. And so going back to the fact that white people should or should not watch the show, I mean, white people, as you should really watch the show. I mean, first of all, obviously, as comedic purposes, it's always there. You should always watch the show to have fun. But also, once you watch the show, it's really there to break once again those social barriers that are in between, that create some kind of drift between black people and white people. I mean, when a white person just walks in the street in, I don't know, Los Angeles and sees a black person who he may think, oh, this person might be a gangster, might not be. But then once you get to know that person, you get to see their real values. I mean, that's what the show is there for. I mean, that's what I feel like. That's what it really made me think about. I mean, for example, if you look at the character Charlie, I mean, he was working with Johnson at Stephen and Lido, where he works, and in the last season, or yeah, this season, he quit or he left. He was laid off, I think. And so in that part, I mean, it really showed his other side, because a lot of people have seen Charlie as this person who was from the ghetto, always kept a random gun to his side and came to work and was very quote unquote ratchet about his lifestyle. But then towards in certain parts of the show, you really get to see his real values. You get to see um, what he's really made of. So just before he's about to leave, he has this deep conversation with Andre, and that's when Andre really understands that this person who I was thinking was always this ghetto person who was not, who was very, how should I put this, very unorthodox in the way he lives. I get to see that now he's this person who actually has feelings, who actually has values, who actually cares about the people around him, has actually has emotions, um, has some sort of humanity in him, and um, people think that uh, sorry, it's yeah. Um, the white characters in this show, what do they represent? Well, for example, I think they've been put there systematically, and it's a very smart move by Kenya Barris. I mean, kudos to him. He was probably one of the best producers I've ever seen, because he's really done the show well. I mean, even just as a side note, I read that when the show was the last episode, I mean, that was being aired, right before he aired it, he said how stressed he was, how I mean, he went on the phone with one of the channels, and he was stressed. He didn't know how people were going to react to it because of how deep the show was. I mean, when they recorded, he didn't think it would be that deep. And so when just before they went on air, I mean, he really, like, he was stressing. I mean, he was like, okay, this is going to be a huge blow to the people. I don't know how people are going to react. I mean, are people going to take it as just another race card that I'm pulling out, or is it going to be something that people are going to really think about? And to me, honestly, I think he did a very, very good job in emulating the struggle that African Americans in that context go through. And so back to our subject about white people in the show and what they're represented. I think that, for example, of the boss of Andre Johnson and his coworker, I forget their names. In the office, anytime in the office, they always tend to present out these black stereotypes. Watermelon and saying, "Oh, my brother," and all these slang words, and they try to emulate what you would typically see in a white person who is not informed. I mean, I'm not hating on white people or anything, but I'm just saying that these characters they tend to represent a lot of times, and I think it's been done on purpose. They tend to represent a lot of times the the stereotypes that white people see amongst black people. You know, the fact that, oh, so for example, Johnson comes to work one day and I don't know, his just his hypothetical. I don't know, his haircut is kind of messed up, or for example, he has a situation at home and they're just like, oh, that's so very unblack of you. You know, you're black, you should be doing this and whatnot. And so I think that that's really the goal that Kenny Barris and his team had for this production, was to bring in the white people, even the white friends, for example, the friend of Andre Jr. at school, like in the first episode when they were playing ball hockey. You know, it was seen as, you know, I mean, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, even they, not just the white people, but the black people. So sometimes you tend to see Andre Johnson saying, oh, when his son was about to go for tryouts in the car, he's like, Dad, I have tryouts today. He's like, yeah, you better get that point guard. And he's like, no, Dad, tryouts for ball hockey, right? And so these stereotypes that are seen mostly, they tend to come a lot from the black families, but also I mean in the show, but also when you see them being portrayed through the white characters in the show, and I think that's really important. It's really there to show the people who are watching it how ridiculous stereotypes can be. That these characters, for example, the white people, they really emulate the stereotypes. I mean, how they just show how stupid stereotypes can be. I mean, throughout the show, they really show you, like, they go back in time and they show you the stereotypes that are being emulated by white people towards black people, and they even show stereotypes that black people have portrayed. And so I think that shows like these, I mean, not just Blackish, I mean, other shows, like, for example, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, a very famous show, and other shows that I've heard of, Sister Sister, and all these other shows. I think they're really there to, they might be there for comedy, but also there to inform and to really emulate what, like, they're really there to mock the things that we say, the things that we say that are irrelevant. You know, the indirect bigotry that a lot of people portray nowadays. I mean, so when watching these shows, I mean, it's either you watch them for comedic purposes, and I certainly do that, but also watch them and read between the lines, looking at them and be like, okay, these characters are acting in a certain way. I think that it's really there just to tell me how stupid and how certain things that we think are normal and we let pass by are really much of just bigotry and racism and other things that society tries to pin on each other, you know. And so taking it on a general scope, I mean, yes, we understand that these are multi-million-dollar industries there to make profit and everything, but sometimes you can take a certain message out of it. So for me, Blackish, after that last show, that last episode, it really got to me on a personal level, and it just made me think. It made me think about how we shouldn't be quick to judge. We shouldn't be quick to look at people in a certain way that kind of degrades them from what their God-given right is, you know? So for me, I shouldn't go in the street and look at a white person and automatically deem him as racist. And me, as a white person, I shouldn't go and automatically see a black person who is not so you know, so perfectly, and look at him as a gangster or as a gang member or as somebody who's doesn't have any dreams in life. And so I think that's what really these shows emulate. They're really there just to make to send a sort of a strong message, a subliminal message in the form of comedy, essentially.